I'm pregnant, and the father of my baby wants to return to his wife. They are trying to turn this into a surrogate situation and take the baby from me. I never thought I would end up in this situation, pregnant, alone, and being pressured to give up my baby. When I met Ethan, he told me he was separated from his wife. He acted like a man who was moving on, someone who was ready to start a new chapter. I believed him. But now, I am 4 months pregnant, and everything has changed. Ethan suddenly wants to reconcile with his wife, Rebecca. And their solution? They want me to hand over my child, as if I were nothing more than a surrogate. They are calling it what is best for the baby. They say it is the right thing to do. But I am not a surrogate. I am a mother. And I will not let them take my child away just to fix their marriage. What they did not expect was that I would fight back. Ethan and I met at a time when I was not looking for love. I had just moved to a new city for work, settling into my small but cozy apartment, trying to build a life for myself. We met through mutual friends, and from the beginning, he was charming and kind. He listened when I talked, made me laugh, and treated me like I was special. The one thing that made me hesitate, he was married. But he assured me over and over again that he and Rebecca were separated. He told me they had grown apart and had been living separate lives for over a year. He was just waiting for the right moment to finalize things, to make the separation legal. I wanted to believe him. And for a while I did. Our relationship progressed quickly, and I fell for him faster than I ever had for anyone before. He was attentive, always checking in on me, planning weekend trips, and making me feel like I was his priority. It was easy to get lost in the fantasy of it all. Then, I found out I was pregnant. At first, Ethan seemed happy, shocked, but happy. He held my hand, told me we would figure everything out together. He said he had always wanted to be a father, and that this was just another reason for him to push forward with his divorce. I believed him. But things started changing soon after. Ethan became distant. His messages were shorter, his calls less frequent. When I asked him what was wrong, he blamed work stress. He told me not to worry, that everything was fine. Then one night, he came over with a serious look on his face. He sat me down and told me the truth. He had been talking to Rebecca, and she wanted to work things out. Apparently, she had found out about my pregnancy, and instead of getting angry, she saw it as a sign. She told Ethan that they should stay together for the sake of the child. Except, in her mind, the child would be raised by them, not me. They had decided, without my input, that I would give birth, hand over my baby, and they would raise the child as if it were their own. They framed it as a surrogacy arrangement, as if I had volunteered for this. I was in complete shock. Ethan sat there, telling me that it was the best solution, that their home would be more stable, that they had the resources to give the baby a better life. And the worst part, he actually thought I would agree. I told him no. I was the mother. This was my child, not some solution to fix his broken marriage. Ethan's demeanor changed immediately. He went from trying to be gentle and persuasive to cold and detached. He told me I was being unreasonable, that I was making things harder than they needed to be. And then he left. After Ethan walked out that night, I sat in my apartment, overwhelmed with emotions. I was heartbroken, furious, and terrified all at once. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of it. How could he think I would just hand over my child? Did he really believe I would be willing to erase myself from my own baby's life? A few days passed, and I did not hear from Ethan. No calls, no messages, nothing. It was like he had vanished. But then, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It is about the baby." I knew it had to be Rebecca. I hesitated before responding, but I had questions that only she could answer. So, I agreed to meet her. We met at a small cafe, and the moment I saw her, my stomach twisted. She was beautiful, poised, and clearly well put together. She sat down across from me, a polite but distant smile on her face. "I want to be clear about why I asked you to meet," she began. "Ethan and I have been through a lot. This baby is a blessing, but the circumstances are complicated." I folded my arms, already sensing where this was going. "I know this was not planned," she continued. "But my husband and I have decided that the best thing for the baby is for us to raise it together." I could not hold back my anger. "Your husband? You mean Ethan? The man who told me you were separated." Rebecca's expression did not change. "Ethan and I have had our ups and downs, but we are choosing to move forward. This child should be raised in a stable home, with 2 parents who are together. We can provide that." I shook my head. "You are asking me to give up my baby. Do you even hear yourself?" Rebecca sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. "We are willing to compensate you, of course. We can cover all medical expenses, and after the birth, we can discuss a financial arrangement." My blood ran cold. "A financial arrangement? You are trying to buy my baby." She gave me a patient smile. "Think of it as making sure you are taken care of. You can move on with your life. No complications, no stress." I felt like I was going to be sick. "Absolutely not. I am the mother. This is my child." Rebecca's expression finally hardened. "You do not understand, do you? This is not just about you. Ethan has rights. He is the father, and he will fight for custody. And let me be clear, I have the means to support him in that fight." After that meeting, things escalated quickly. Ethan finally called me, but not to apologize. Instead, he told me that I needed to reconsider. "I am trying to make this easy for everyone," he said. "You are making it messy." I laughed bitterly. "Messy? You mean because I refuse to give up my child?" "I am serious," he warned. "Rebecca has lawyers. They are prepared to take this to court if you force our hand." My heart pounded. "Force your hand? This is my baby, Ethan. You cannot provide the same kind of life we can," he said, his voice cold and logical. "If this goes to court, we will fight for full custody. We will say that you are unstable, financially unprepared, and that it is in the baby's best interest to be with us." I felt like the walls were closing in. I was not rich. I did not have an expensive lawyer. But I was not going to let them take my child. That night, I started researching everything I could about parental rights, custody battles, and what I needed to do to protect myself. Determined not to be bullied into giving up my baby, I sought legal advice. I found a family lawyer, an older woman named Linda, who immediately made me feel like I was not alone in this battle. After explaining everything to her, she sighed and shook her head. "They are trying to intimidate you," she said firmly. "They have no legal grounds to take this child away from you unless they can prove you are an unfit mother." I swallowed hard. "But they have money, lawyers. They could drag me through court." Linda nodded. "They could try, but they do not have the upper hand here. As the biological mother, you have automatic custody rights. Ethan would have to fight to get even partial custody. And if he wants full custody, he would have to prove extreme circumstances like neglect or abuse." A wave of relief washed over me. "So, they cannot just take my baby?" "No," she assured me. "But that does not mean they will not try to pressure you. Be prepared for manipulation." I felt steadier, but my relief was short-lived. The next day, Rebecca showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing there, dressed perfectly, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said. I did not want to let her in, but I also wanted to hear what she had to say. So I stepped aside, allowing her into my living room. She looked around, clearly taking in my small apartment. "This is where you plan to raise the baby?" she asked, her voice laced with judgment. I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Rebecca?" She turned to face me, her eyes sharp. "I need you to understand something. Ethan is my husband. I know he lied to you, but that does not change the fact that we are together. We have built a life, and I will not let this baby ruin it." I stiffened. "Ruin it? That baby is a person. Your husband's child. My child." Rebecca's face hardened. "Ethan wants to be a father, but he wants to do it with me. We can provide a life that you cannot. Stability. Opportunity. A home with 2 parents." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "I will not give up my child, Rebecca." Her expression darkened. "Then be prepared for a fight." I expected her to leave after that, but instead, she pulled out a folder and placed it on my coffee table. "What is this?" I asked. She sighed. "Legal documents. Custody agreements. You can take a financial settlement and sign away parental rights, or we take this to court." I could not believe what I was hearing. They were treating my baby like a business transaction. I pushed the folder back toward her. "Get out." Rebecca stood, adjusting her coat. "You are making a mistake." I did not respond. I just opened the door and waited for her to leave. After Rebecca's visit, things got worse. Ethan started texting me constantly, switching between apologies and veiled threats. One moment, he would say, "I am sorry this is happening like this. I never wanted to hurt you." And the next, "You are being unreasonable. You will regret this." I ignored him. But then one night he showed up at my door. I almost did not answer, but he would not stop knocking. When I opened the door, he looked disheveled, nothing like the polished man I had fallen for. "I just want to talk," he said. I crossed my arms. "About what?" "How you and your wife are trying to steal my child." He sighed. "It is not like that. Rebecca is scared. She sees this baby as a threat to our marriage." I raised an eyebrow. Maybe she should have thought about that before marrying a liar. He ran a hand through his hair. "I messed up, okay? I never should have lied to you. But this is happening now, and we need to figure it out." "There is nothing to figure out," I shot back. "I am keeping my baby." His eyes darkened. "I could take you to court." I stared at him, stunned by how quickly he had shifted from apologetic to threatening. Finally, I said, "Go ahead. Try." His jaw clenched. "You do not know what you are getting into." I met his gaze. "Neither do you." The next day, I met with Linda again and told her everything. She was furious but not surprised. "Classic intimidation tactics," she said. "But we can fight back." She helped me start the legal process to protect my parental rights. We documented everything, texts, emails, threats. Then something happened that changed everything. Rebecca called me, and for the first time, her voice was shaky. "Ethan left," she said. I frowned. "What?" "He is gone. Packed his bags and left. He said he needs time to think." I was stunned. After all the threats, all the manipulation, Ethan had walked away from both of us. Rebecca let out a bitter laugh. "Guess you and I were both fooled." For the first time, I felt a strange sort of pity for her. She had been so desperate to keep Ethan that she had tried to take my child. And in the end, he had abandoned her too. Even though Ethan had left, I knew my battle was not over. Rebecca had been just as determined as he was to take my baby, and I did not trust that she would simply give up. But days passed, then weeks, and I heard nothing from her. No texts, no legal threats, no more unwanted visits. I had expected a war, but suddenly, the battlefield was silent. I stayed in close contact with Linda, who advised me to remain cautious. "Silence does not always mean surrender," she warned. "Be prepared for anything." Then one day, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Rebecca's lawyer. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for more legal threats. But instead, the letter contained something unexpected. An official statement from Rebecca withdrawing all claims of custody. She was giving up. I read the letter twice, trying to make sense of it. After everything, she was walking away? I could hardly believe it, but I was not about to question it. I called Linda right away, and she reviewed the documents. "This is real," she confirmed. "She has relinquished any intent to seek custody. Legally, you are in the clear." Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave. I had spent so long living in fear of losing my baby, and now, just like that, the fight was over. But something still nagged at me. Why had she given up so easily? That question was answered a few days later when Rebecca called me. I debated whether to answer. A part of me never wanted to hear her voice again, but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, she sounded different. Defeated. "I just wanted to tell you that I am done," she said quietly. I did not respond, waiting for her to continue. "I spent years trying to make my marriage work," she admitted. "I ignored all the signs that Ethan was not the man I thought he was. When he told me about you and the baby, I was desperate. I wanted to believe that if we had the child, he would stay." I stayed silent, processing her words. "But I was wrong," she continued. "Ethan is gone. He left me with nothing. And I realized something. I do not want to raise a child who is not mine, especially not under these circumstances. I am not going to fight you anymore." For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. She had been just as manipulated as I had. Still, I could not forget everything she had tried to do to me. "I appreciate you telling me," I said finally. She let out a bitter laugh. "Not that it matters now. You win." Then she hung up. With Rebecca and Ethan both gone from my life, I was finally able to focus on what mattered, preparing for my baby's arrival. I threw myself into setting up a nursery, attending doctor's appointments, and surrounding myself with the right support system. My family, who had initially been hesitant about my pregnancy, started to come around. My mother became my biggest supporter, helping me set up my baby's room and reminding me that I was not alone. "You are going to be an amazing mother," she told me one night as she folded tiny baby clothes. I smiled, feeling something I had not felt in months, peace. And then finally the day came. Labor was long and exhausting, but the moment I held my baby in my arms, everything else faded away. A beautiful baby girl. She was perfect. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at her tiny features. I had fought so hard for this moment, for the right to be her mother. And now she was here, safe in my arms. I whispered to her softly, "I promise I will always protect you." As I held her, I knew Ethan and Rebecca were just a chapter in my story. They did not define me, and they did not define my daughter. We were going to be just fine. Weeks passed, and I finally felt like I was settling into motherhood. But then, just as I was beginning to feel truly safe, I got an unexpected message. It was from Ethan. It was just a simple text. "Can we talk?" My stomach twisted. I had not heard from him in months, and I had hoped I never would again. I debated ignoring him, but something told me he would not stop until I responded. So, against my better judgment, I replied, "What do you want?" His response was almost immediate. "I want to meet my daughter." Rage bubbled up inside me. He had spent months trying to take her away from me, and now, after disappearing, he suddenly wanted to play father? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "No," I texted back. "You made your choice. You do not get to walk away and then come back when it suits you." His reply came quickly. "You cannot keep me from her. I have rights." I knew better. He had abandoned me. He had abandoned his child. And legally, he had nothing to stand on. I did not respond. I simply blocked his number. And just like that, I was free. Looking back, I realized that everything I had been through had only made me stronger. I had stood my ground, refused to be manipulated, and in the end, I had won. I had my baby, my family, and a future that was mine to shape. Ethan and Rebecca? They were nothing more than a lesson. And as I rocked my daughter to sleep, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let anyone take her away from me. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you never miss an update.